In this particular, let's say, set, we have 3 questions and it goes like this. The number of students in a college happens to be 240. Each student opted for exactly one of the specialization among computer science, mechanical and electronics. This part is very, very important, and it simply means it's not a case of a Venn diagram which might look like at the start, because there's no overlap over here. Nobody can, let's say, do engineering in, let's say, both mechanical and, let's say, computer science, or all three of them or two of them. So to construct this particular part right now, what I can do is, right now if I read further, total number of students who opted for computer science and electronics is equal to the number of students who opted for mechanical. That's the first information. Then 42.5% of the student who opted for mechanical are girls. So I can find out the number of girls who are doing the mechanical course. The number of girls who opted for computer science is 1/3. The number of boys who opted for mechanical again can be easily found out. The difference between the number of boys who opted for electronics and number of girls who opted for computer science is equal to the difference between the number of boys who opted for computer science and the number of girls who opted for electronics. And finally, they also told you the number of girls who opted for electronics happens to be a 28. And then they asked you the 3 questions over here. By what percentage is the number of boys who opted for mechanical is more than the total number of students who opted for electronics, and so on, like this. 2 questions on percentage term, one basically on the absolute number of girls in the engineering colleges. Let's see what need to be done. So as I told you, this part is very, very crucial. This sentence, total number of students who opted for computer science and electronics is equal to the total number of people who opted for mechanics. So from this particular portion, we can say that mechanical is nothing but half of the total number of students. So I will write it down like this: computer science, let's say electronics, and let's say mechanical. Now for each of them, I can just write down boys. Simple table structure. Girls. Total. So from this particular part, total number of students who opted for computer science and electronics is nothing but equal to mechanical. So right now, if you look at C plus E plus M should be equals to a 240. Now together C plus E must be equals to M, and that basically will give you 2M is equals to 240, M is equals to a 120. So total number of, let's say, student in the mechanical department or stream must be equals to a 120, which is very, very evident from this statement. If I go further, it says that the number of girls who opted for computer science is 1/3 the number of boys who opted for mechanical. So this is not known to us right now. We have not looked at this statement. 42.5% of the students who opted for mechanical are girls. Now understand the number 42.5%. What do you think is the term 40%? The term 40% basically corresponds to a 2 by 5. How much is 2 by 5 of the number 120? And that become equals to a 48. What does a 2.5% would mean? 2.5 to 25% means 1 by 4. 2.5% means a 1 by 40. So 1 by 40 of this number means additional 3. So this particular number, the number of girls in the mechanical department eventually comes out to be equals to a 51. Also understand the number, this 42.5%, I can think of it as 17 by 40 of the number 120, and that also will give you 51 girls. If the number of girls in this department, mechanical department, is 51, which means the number of boys must be equal to a 69. And then we can read that particular part. The number of girls who opted for computer science, which is this portion, is equal to, one can say, 1/3 the number of boys who opted for mechanical. 1/3 of this number 69, and that basically means a 23. So right now we also know the number of girls who are opted for computer science department. Then this is a very lengthy statement. Let's read the last known part first of all. The number of girls who opted for electronics is 28. Girls electronics happens to be equals to a 28. Now right now if you look at, we are in a condition to add the numbers. So number of girls are 23 plus 20 become 51. 51 plus 51 becomes a 102. This is 102. Total is 240. This must be equals to a 138. If you look at one of the question we are able to answer by now, total number of girls in the college happens to be 102. So option number 3 is the answer for that particular question. Now we are yet to find out this numbers. Understand the total of computer science and electronics must be equals to 120. And we are yet to use this information which is telling you the number difference between the number of boys who opted for electronics. Let's take some variable. This is A, this is B. Difference between the number of boys opting for electronics, which is A, and the number of girls who opted for computer science, which is 23. So difference of A and 23 is same as the difference between the number of boys opting for computer science, which is B, and the number of, let's say, girls who opted for electron, which happens to be a 28. So mod of, let's say, A minus 23 is equals to a mod of B minus 28. Now from this we can possibly find out the value of A and B. Also understand the total number of boys must be equals to a 138, and out of that we have 69 over here. It simply means A plus B is going to be equals to another 69. That's also very, very important. And now if you look at what we can possibly say is A minus 23 is B minus 28. From this I can say B minus A is equals to, this will come out to be as a 5. And if I possibly take the minus part, then you will get A minus 23 is equals to minus B plus 28, and that will give you A plus B as a 51. But understand A plus B is equal to a 69. This part we already know. A plus B must be equal to a 69. So this can be simply ruled out. And now if I solve for this, so A plus B as 69, B minus A as a 5, you add them up, you will get 2B as 74. So B will become equals to a 37. So A will become equals to a 32. So A become 32, B become 37. Total of this will become 60. Total of this also become equals to 60. And with this, we will be in a position to answer all our questions. So let's look at the question here, the first one. By what percent is the number of boys who opted for mechanical? So number of boys opting for mechanical, that number is 69. First of all, this is 69, is more than the total number of students who opted for electronics. Total of electronics happens to be equal to a 60. So I want to know 69 is what percentage more than the number 60. And the simple answer for this particular question would be, it is going to be nothing but 9 more compared to a 60 into 100. 25, 23, 3 threes are, and this simply become equals to 15%. So option number 1 is the required answer for this particular question. And what about the last one? The number of girls who opted for mechanical. So first of all, girls who opted for mechanicals are 51. Is how much percentage of the number of students who opted for electronics? The same base happens to be 60. So now we want to know basically 51 is what percentage of 60. So simple calculation, 51 over 60 into 100, 25, 23, 3 times 17, 17 fives are becomes 85. So 51 basically is 85 percentage of the number 60. Hence option number 3 is the answer for this particular question. In the next question, we are supposed to match the list in column 1 with the list in column number 2, and we have to use some sort of strategy to solve this sum in a slightly faster manner. For example, what I will do in this particular case is I'm going to look at first of all A, and if I look at this particular number in the numerator, after decimal I can see 2 digits, 3 digits, 3 and 2. That simply mean I can nullify this decimals. And then since this number is square root of 81, this part basically would become, one can say, a 9. Then root of the number 484, one knows that 21 square is 441, 22 square happens to be a 484. The second number I will write is a 22. Divide by root of the number 64 happens to be nothing but the number 8. And the number root of 625 happens to be nothing but equals to a 25 over here. And then if I simplify, this is 2 11, this is 2 4, and this part simply becomes 11 9s are 99. Divide by 4 times of 25 happens to be 100. So this expression, a 99 over 100 become equals to a 0.99, which means this A is going to go with 2. And if I look at the option at this particular stage, option number 1 and option number 2 can be simply ruled out. One can say right now 3 or 4 is going to be the answer. Now if I look at 3 and 4, in that particular case one can observe that D is going to match with number 3 for sure. So outcome of this has to be equals to 50, and I'm not worried about that particular part. So what I will do is I will, let's say, take up this B, and if I can find out what is the value of B, in that particular case we are going to have our answer. So let's solve this. Again, if you observe, after decimal we can see 3 numbers in the numerator. In the denominator we can see 2 and then a 1. So again we can simply nullify our decimal system. So what do we have here now? Root of 204 times 42 divide by 7 and a 34 over here. We can clearly see that 7 times of 6 happens to be a 42. The number 204 and 34 both has a factor of, one can say, 17. So 17 2s are 17, 12s are 2, 6s are also happens to be, one can say, 6 over here. And now one can say root of 6 into 6. This part become root of 36, which one can say has to be equal to a 6 over here. And then one can say B has to match with 4. So if B has to go with 4, I can clearly say between option number 3 and 4, I will choose option number 3 as the answer for this particular question. In the next sum, it is given that if A into B into C happens to be positive, such that A, B, C are integers, which are the following must be true over here. And understand over here, when we say product of three numbers A into B into C is positive, this basically is going to happen when none of them happens to be negative integers, or one can say when two of them happens to be negative integer. And please note, for this particular question, the most important keyword happens to be nothing but this particular part must be true, which basically means something which has to be true in each and every scenario. So here one can say A into B into C is positive is going to be true, as I told you, one case when none of them are negative, or when two of them are negative. Which two? It could be A and B, could be a A and C, could be a B and C. So A and B are negative, C is positive. A and C are negative, B is positive, or it could be A is positive and B and C basically are negative. And let us look at the options carefully now. The first one talks about A upon B is less than 0. So understand, if you look at various cases, like the first one, A and B both are positive. So A upon B is going to be positive. In the second one, both A and B are negative, so A upon B will be positive. So in the first two cases, this result happens to be true. In the next one, A is negative, B is positive, or vice versa, which clearly mean that the first option basically may be true or may be false. So number one can say may be true. Then if I look at the next one, AB upon C. So if I look at case number 1, A into B is positive. Divide by C, which is also positive. So in case number 1, the result AB upon C happens to be positive. In the next one, the term A into B is positive because both of them are negative numbers. Divide by C, which is a positive number. So positive upon positive again becomes positive. And lastly, also A into B is negative. Divide by C, which is negative. So negative upon negative happens to be a positive number. And lastly as well, A times B happens to be negative number. Divide by C, which is also a negative number. Negative upon negative becomes a positive number. And it is clear that A into B upon C is positive, and this is true for each and every scenario. Hence, option number 2 is always true and must be our answer over here. Please note, we should not, let's say, check number 3 and number 4. Again, if someone want to verify, they can take some or more cases over here. In the next sum, the objective is to arrange these numbers A, B, C, D in the increasing order. And if you look at over here, they have given you A as 16 2/3 percentage, B is given to you as 2 by 15, C as 0.17, and D basically as 0.25% of the number 64. So what you can do is you can choose to write every number in the form of decimal, or we can choose to write each and every number basically in the form of, one can say, a percentage format. Like in this particular scenario, the first term, if I represent in terms of percentage, will remain 16.66%. If I look at the second option, which is B, which happens to be a 2 over 15, if someone knows how much is 1 over 15, which one can say is equal to 6.66%, so 2 upon 15 is nothing but, one can say, 2 times of the number 6.66, giving you a 13.33%. Now the next number 0.17 translates to nothing but, one can say, a 17%. So right now at this particular moment, if I want to possibly arrange A, B and C, so one can say B is smallest as of now, C is larger than A. So right now we can see a order like B, A and then a C. Lastly, if I look at number D, 0.25% of 64. So what I will do in this particular case is, this is going to be equals to 0.2 of 64, and we can move this percentage on the RHS side. What is 0.25 of the number 64, or one can say 1 by 4 of 64, and this part basically become a 16, or one can say a 16 percentage. So clearly one can say that A is bigger than D. So we can see B is the smallest, then comes D, then comes A, then comes C. So B, D, A, C, which clearly mean that option number 1 is the required answer for this particular question. In the next sum, again, we have to, let's say, match the list in column 1 and with, let's say, column number 2. And again, we have to use the smart way. So first of all, let's try to evaluate the A, which is duplicate of ratio 2:7. Now, how do you find out the duplicate ratio of something like a A is to B, which is nothing but equals to a square is to B square? If they told about triplicate ratio, one can find out A cube is to B cube. So in this particular context, the duplicate ratio of the number 2:7 is nothing but, one can say, a 2 square is to 7 square, which one can say is equals to 4:49, and which clearly mean that this A is going to go with 2. And if I look at A going with 2, there's no need to check any further, let's say B, C or a D, and one can straight away mark option number 2 as the required answer for this particular question. Now understand, if someone look at C and D also very carefully, they will observe that the task is ratio of 2:7 is same as. Now we know that a given ratio can be simplified. Like in this particular case, if I look at this list 2 and look at the number 1, 25 and 30, both of these numbers are divisible by 5. So if I reduce both this number by 5, this is going to become, one can say, 5:6. And this part is same as nothing but D. So D is going to go with 1. Again, could have been helpful to mark option number 2 as the answer. If I look at, suppose, this number 4, 4 and 14, again both these numbers are divisible by the number 2. If I cancel both this number by 2, I get nothing but 2 is to 7, which means the ratio of 2 is to 7 is same as nothing but 4 is to 14. So C has to go with 4 over here. Whatever be the case, option number 2 is the required answer for this simple question. In the next question, we have given that if the root of the equation px square plus x plus r equals to 0 are reciprocal to each other. Now this part is very important, reciprocal of each other. What does this mean? If one root happens to be 2, other will be a 1 by 2. If one root happens to be a 3, other basically will be nothing but a 1 by 3 and so on like this. The question says, which of the following is going to be correct? So in this particular context, first of all, understand we should know this property that in case I talk about the standard quadratic, which is ax square plus bx plus c equals to 0, the sum of the roots is minus of b by a. Alpha into beta, the product should be equals to a c by a. And whenever we have the scenario where one root is reciprocal of other, which simply mean in this particular case that beta is nothing but 1 by alpha. So I gave the example, if one root is 2 by 3, other will become nothing but a 3 by 2. So whenever two roots are reciprocal, their multiplication, as you can see, alpha into beta is always going to be equals to a 1. So in this particular scenario, I want this c by a term to be equals to a 1. Now what does c represent? C represent nothing but our constant term. And what does a represent? Nothing but the coefficient of x square. So if you look at this particular equation, px square plus x plus r equals to 1, I can say my constant term happens to be a r. The coefficient of x square happens to be a p. So r by p is equals to 1 will give you r equals to p, or p is equals to a r over here, which clearly mean that my required answer over here must be option number 2 over here. In the next sum, they have given you 4 statement, and number A talks about if 1 upon x is to 1 upon y is to 1 upon z happens to be 2 is to 3 is to 5, then x is to y is to z will be equals to a 15 is to 10 is to a 6 over here. Now, it's a very basic question, one can say based on the property of ratios, and what we can conclude is if I want to take the reciprocal over here, like x is to y is to z, I will take the reciprocal of the number 2, 3 and 5, which basically would mean a 1 by 2 is to a 1 by 3 is to a 1 by 5 over here. And now, if I want a simplified value of this 1 by 2 is to 1 by 3 is to 1 by 5, in that particular case, what we can do is, we can try to multiply this entire number by something which is divisible by 2, 3 and 5. And something which is a multiple of 2, 3 and 5, the smallest number I can think of is the number 30. So when you multiply a ratio throughout with the same quantity, the ratio remains unaffected. So in this particular scenario, if I multiply by 30, 30 divided by 2, 15. 30 upon 3 is 10. 30 upon 5 happens to be a 6. So required ratio of x is to y is to z will be nothing but 15 is to 10 is to 6, which clearly mean that A happens to be true. And now if I use the smart trick over here, if A is true, I can say option number 1 can't be the answer. Option number 2 can't be the answer. And if A happens to be true, and if I look at option number 3 and 4, I should safely choose to mark option number 3 as the answer for this particular question. Now just to add whether B is true or not, what is given for B? 4 into P is equal to, so 4 into P is equal to 6 into Q is equals to 9 into R and equals to what? If I think about a number, let's say, which is a multiple of 4 and a 6 and a 9, the LCM of 4 and 6 happens to be a 12. The LCM of 12 and 9 happens to be a 36. So if I equate each of this to be equal to a 36, then one can say if 4p is 36, p become equals to 9. If 6q is equal to 36, q will become equal to 6. If 9r is equal to 36, your r will become equals to a 4. So if I want the ratio, let's say of p is to q is to r, which happens to be 9 is to 6 is to 4, So number B also happens to be true. So A and B both are true. And with the given option, I should mark option number 3 as the answer over here. In the next sum, it is given that Ramesh invests rupee 1200 at 5% simple interest. How much additional money must he invest at 8% simple interest so that his total annual income will be nothing but equal to 6% of his total investment during the year? Now, we can look at multiple ways. I can take the help of equation to solve this, or I can take the help of allocation. Let's look at both the approaches. So in this particular context, first of all, if you look at the first part, that on this 1200, how much is your yearly interest? And the simple answer would be 5% of the number 1200. 5% of 1200. Then they say, how much additional money, which I don't know, let me assume it to be equals to X, must he invest at 8%? So on the money X, if I'm going to earn 8% simple interest, my earning will now going to be nothing but, one can say, 8% of X, so that his total annual income will be equal to 6% of his total investment. So understand, in this particular case, what is the total investment? And the simple answer would be 1200 plus X. And on that amount of 1200 plus X, one is earning, one can say, a 6%. So 6% of 1200 plus X. And this two basically need to be equal. Now if you, let's say, write it down over here, I can cancel percentage throughout. 5 into this number is nothing but a 6000 plus 8 into X. This would be equal to 6 times of 1200 become equals to 7200 plus 6 times of X will become a 6X. And then if I solve for X, one can say 2X equals to a 1200, X become equals to a 600. So the additional amount to be invested happens to be nothing but 600. So one can safely choose to mark option number 2 over here. If I look at the next approach with the help of allegation, it says that Ramesh invests 1200 at 5% simple interest. So understand, if the entire amount was only 1200 and the rate of investment basically was 5%. So remember, 1200 was put at 5%. Some more amount which I don't know right now was put at 8%. So please note, neither the entire money was put at 5% nor the entire money basically was put at 8%, but the eventual return happens to be nothing but a 66%. So when combined, the entire money gives you a return of 6%. Nothing but a concept of mixtures over here. So now if I go diagonally, 6 minus 5 will give me a 1, 8 minus 6 will give me a 2, which means the amount which is put at 5% and amount which is put at 8% must be in the ratio of 2:1. Now understand, if this 2 is 1200, if 2 part is 1200, then 1 part basically correspond to 600. So this is going to become a 600. So required answer must be option number 2 over here. In the next sum, which goes like this, a cylindrical vessel of radius 4 cm contains water. A solid sphere of 3 cm radius is lowered into the water until it's completely immersed. The water level in the vessel will rise by how much? So understand, if you try to understand with the help of a diagram a bit, let's say we take a cylinder. And suppose where the water level basically happens to be at the point A over here. Now once you are going to immerse the solid sphere, the water level basically is going to rise. So let's say the water level was at A, and after you put the solid sphere, the water level basically goes to some amount, let's say a B over here. Then understand, this is the rise in the water, and understand the amount of water over here is nothing but, one can say, the volume of the sphere. And I will take the help of this fundamental principle to solve this particular question. So suppose if I call H as the rise in the water, In that particular case, this particular volume of the water is nothing but one can say pi r square h. So one can say volume of the cylinder should be equals to volume of the sphere. And for the cylinder, my required radius, I should take it as 4 centimeter. So I will use the formula pi r square h, where r is known to me as the number 4 and h happens to be equals to, one can say nothing but h only. So pi into 4 square into h, and this will be equals to, for the sphere, the radius happens to be nothing but a 3, and the formula for the volume of a sphere happens to be nothing but 4 by 3 pi r cube. So 4 by 3 pi r cube, which happens to be nothing but one can say 3 cube in this particular case. And now in this equation you can see we only have one unknown. Pi will simply get cancelled out and we can simply solve for the value of, let's say, h over here. If I simplify, this is 16h is equals to 4 by 3 into a 27. 3 times of 9 is 27. 4 times of 4 is 16. So 4h is 9. H become equals to a 9 by 4 centimeter. Hence the rise in the water level happens to be nothing but one can say 9 by 4. So one can safely choose to mark option number 3 as the answer for this particular question. In the next sum, it is given that a certain amount of money at compound interest grows to 66550, which one can say in 3 years, and 73,205 in 4 years. The rate percent per annum is how much? Again, a very straightforward question on compound interest. So understand what is given to you is that the amount at the end of 3 years happens to be nothing but 66,550. An amount at the end of the 4 year is nothing but equals to a 73205. Now please note that in the 4th year, the interest earned is nothing but on the amount at the end of the previous year. So in this particular context, what we can say is that this amount at the end of the 4 year is nothing but, one can say, you remember the formula P into 1 plus R percent raised to 4. Now in this particular case, this I can rewrite as P into 1 plus R percent raised to 3 into 1 plus R percent. And this part, as you clearly know, is nothing but amount at the end of the 3rd year. So one can say amount at the end of 4 year is equals to amount at the end of 3 year times 1 plus R percent. So I can simply put the value of A4. Amount at the end of 4 year happens to be a 73205. Divide by this A3, which happens to be a 66550, is equals to a 1 plus R percent. And we can simply find out the value of, let's say, R from this. Let's look at these numbers. They are clearly going to be a multiple of 5 for sure. So one can say 7, 14 is 70. 32, 6 times is 30, 20. So 5 into 4 is 20 and then we have 5. So 14641. If I divide this number by 5, so 13 times is 65, 15, 3, 1, 0. Now clearly one can see the number 1331 sounds familiar. The number 14641 also sounds familiar. So people know 11 power 1 is 11. 11 square happens to be a 121. 11 cube happens to be a 1331. 11 power 4 happens to be a 14641. So this number I can clearly see is nothing but 11 into 11 into 11 into 11. Divide by, one can say, 11 into 11 into 11 into 10. So 311 will get cancelled out and we get nothing but 1 plus R percent basically as 11 by 10 or a 1.1. So if 1.1 is equals to 1 plus R percent become equals to 0.1. So R must be equals to a 10%. So required rate over here must be 10%. So option number 1 is the answer for this particular question. If I look at one more way to solve this particular question, already we have got this particular part. Amount at the end of 3rd year happens to be 66550. amount at the end of the fourth year is nothing but 73205. And in the fourth year, the interest earned is nothing but the interest earned on the amount at the end of third year. So if I talk about how much is the interest earned in the fourth year, and one can simply find out this result by doing 73205 minus 66550, and this result happens to be 6655. So now if someone asks you that this 6655 was earned on 66550, so the interest earned in the fourth year upon amount at the end of the third year, this 6655 divided by 66550 happens to be nothing but a 1 over 10, and this is nothing but the required interest earned. So 1 upon 10, one can say, corresponds to a 10%. So the required rate of interest is nothing but 10%. So option number 1 is the answer for this particular question. In the next sum, it is given that a dishonest dealer sells his good at 10% loss on cost price and uses 30% less weight. What is his profit or loss percentage? Understand, first of all, if I look at the options carefully, two of the options are loss, two of them basically are profit. And let's try to understand what is the meaning of each of the statement. The first one is he is selling his good at 10% loss on the cost price. So first of all, if I think it like this, that my cost price, let's say of 100 kg is rupee 100. Now what is the ideal scenario? In this particular case, he should be selling. So selling price of 100 kg must be nothing but 90 rupees. Why? Because he's selling at 10% below the cost. So ideally, if he was not doing cheating with the help of quantity, then the ideal thing should have been the SP of, let's say, 100 kg should be equals to 90. But is he really giving 100 kg during selling? And the simple answer would be no, because he used a 30% less weight. What does this mean? It simply means something which people might see is a 100 kg, he is only giving away a 70 kg. So understand, by selling a 70 kg, he is able to get nothing but rupee 90. So selling price of 70 kg, this 70 kg came because he is doing the cheating of that 30% less weight, and that basically gives him rupees 90. Why 90? Because he is losing 10% on the cost price. Now again, at this particular stage, you can use various ways to solve the problem. People might find out then SP of how much is going to be 100 kg to get what is the revenue which he ultimately makes and get the answer. The easiest thing in this particular case could also be, if cost price of 100 kg is rupee 100, then the cost price of 70 kg is going to be rupee 70. So now we have the same quantity and the cost for the same is rupee 70. The selling price for the same happens to be a 90. So as you can see, one makes a profit of 20 on something which costed them rupee 70. So the required gain percent happens to be nothing but a 20 profit on something which costed them a 70 into 100. 2 by 7, 1 by 7 happens to be 14.28, 2 upon 7 happens to be a 28.57. So this part one can say would be equals to a 28 4 by 7 percentage. And please note, it's a profit scenario, which clearly mean option number 1, 3 are out. Between 2 and 4, we are supposed to get 28 4 by 7. So I will choose option number 4 over option number 2 over here. In the next sum, it says find the number of permutation that can be made from the letters of the word omega if vowel occupy odd places. So if I write down first of all the word omega, and which comprise of, one can say, 3 vowel O, E and A all distinct, and 2 consonant, namely M and G over here. And the vowel must occupy odd places. So we have 5 position, and what we want is that vowel should take up these slots. And what are the positions? So understand the 3 vowels. So the vowels basically, one can say, are O, E and A. and the consonant are M and G. So the three vowel O, E and A can be arranged in these three places in how many way? So one can simply say a 3 factorial. And what about the two consonant M and G? So these two places will be taken up by the consonant. And the two consonant over here in the second and the fourth slot can be arranged in nothing but two ways, or one can say 2 factorial ways. So three vowels can be arranged in 3 factorial ways, and the two vowel basically one can say in 2 factorial ways. So this particular term 3 factorial is known to us as 6. This number is 2. 6 times of 2 is 12. Hence 12 ways. So one can safely choose to mark option number 1 as the answer for this particular question. In the next sum, a straightforward one on probability which goes like this. A glass jar contains 1 red, 3 green, 2 blue and 4 yellow marbles. If a single marble is chosen at random from the jar and then they give you 4 statement over here, again one used to do a smart work in this particular case. Let's try to evaluate one by one. The first one, the probability of getting a yellow marble is 1 by 5. Understand total number of marbles are 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 giving you a 10. And out of those 10 marble, 4 of them happens to be yellow marble. So required probability of a yellow marble must be equals to, one can say, 4 over 10, or one can say 2 by 5. Which clearly mean that this number A is going to be definitely incorrect. And if A is incorrect, and if I look at the options, option number 1, option number 3 are going to be out. So answer has to be 1 out of option number 2 and option number 4. If I look at option number 2 and 4, B is present in both of them, which clearly means there's no point, let's say, finding out the probability for the B statement. It has to be true. Probability of getting a green marble, green are 3 numbers out of 10. So 3 by 10 seems to be fine. So what we can do is we can check either C or D. So if I check C, it came out to be true, I will mark 2. Otherwise, I will mark 4 over here. So probability of getting either a yellow, so yellow as I told you were 4 in numbers, and green were 3 in numbers. So either a yellow or a green, total of 7 marbles are there which are green or yellow, 7 out of 10. This seems to be a right statement. So C is right. If B and C is right, option number 2 must be the answer. Please note, no point checking number D. Why? Because we don't have any option like B, C and D over here. So we can safely choose to mark option number 2, and we'll possibly see as well that number D also happens to be wrong. Why? Red are nothing but 1, yellow are 4. So total number of marbles which are either red or yellow happens to be a 5. So required probability should have been equals to a 5 by 10. And these two are not equal. So number D is wrong. And we have clearly seen that option number 2, which is B and C, are right over here. In the next sum, it is given that a train traveling at 48 kmph crosses another train having half the length of the first train and traveling in the opposite direction at 42 kmph in 12 seconds. So what do we have? First of all, if I look at these two sentences, we have two train speed. I also know the connection between their length as well. The second one basically have half the length of the first one. At the same time, it is also known how much time they take, let's say, to cross each other traveling in the opposite direction. So from this data, we can easily find out the length of train 1 and length of train number 2. So train number 1, train number 2, the speed is 48 for the first one and 42 for the second one. The length of the train, suppose in this particular case, if I possibly take this length as, one can say, 2x for the first train, in that particular case the second one with the speed of 42 has half its length, so it must be equals to x. And the time taken in this particular context happens to be 12 seconds. Now understand, when two trains are supposed to cross each other, what distance they cover, and the simple answer would be nothing but the length of train 1 plus length of train 2. So understand, in this particular case I will write down distance is equals to speed, and I will use the term relative speed in this particular case because both the objects are moving. So relative speed into time. And let's try to put everything. So what about the distance? Nothing but length of train 1 plus length of train 2, which I can say is nothing but 2x plus x, giving you a 3x, equals to, what about the relative speed? Since they are traveling in the opposite direction, it must be nothing but addition of the two speeds. So one can say 48 plus 42, giving you a 90 kmph. And what about the time? Time to cross happens to be nothing but a 12 second. Now the only thing which you're worried about is the unit part here. This is in terms of kmph. Time happens to be in terms of second. I can convert the speed from kmph to a meter per second by multiplying by the factor 5 by 18. So I can say 3x is 90 into 5 by 12, 5 by 18 meter per second into a 12 seconds. And let's solve for this now. This is 18 times of 5. This is 3 times of 4. So the value of x, one can clearly see, will become nothing but equals to 100 meters. So length of train 2 happens to be 100 meters. Length of train number 1, one can say, happens to be equals to 200 meter. Wait, they have not asked you for length of train 1 and length of train 2. What they say is the story continues, and it says the train traveling at 48 kmph, the one with the length of 200 meter, also passes a railway platform in 45 seconds. So understand now, to cross a platform, the distance to be traveled is nothing but length of train 1 plus length of the platform. So I can say again, this distance is equals to speed into time. So in this particular case, one can say length of train 1 is 200 plus length of the platform. What about the speed? 48 kmph. But if I want to convert this in terms of meter per second, this must be a 48 into a 5 by 18 meter per second times, it takes 45 seconds. Let's simplify this now. So one can say over here 6 8s are, 6 3s are, this is a 15. So 8 times of 5, one can say, happens to be a 40. 40 into 15 happens to be a 600. So one can say 200 plus length of the platform is equals to a 600, giving you length of the platform to be equals to a 400. So required length of the platform is going to be 400 meter. Hence option number 3 is the answer for this particular question. In the next one, they have given you two statements, 1 and 2, and the options are like this. Both the statements are true, both of them are false, 1 is true, 2 is false, and vice versa, something of that kind. Let's try to evaluate the first statement and understand, whenever you look at this type of problem, once you try to evaluate the first statement, you will be in a position to, let's say, eliminate two of the options. So first of all, it says, in order to get a mixture worth rupees 16.5 per kg, a grocer need to mix two variety of pulses costing rupees 15 and 20 per kg respectively in the ratio of 7:3. So clear cut case of, one can say, weighted average. And what I can say is that, fine, suppose if I take 7 kg of the cheaper variety and let's say 3 kg of the costlier variety, in that particular case the total amount, one can say, will be equals to 15 into 7 plus 20 into 3, and the total quantity is 7 plus 3, giving you a 10. So we simply use the concept of weighted average, P1 into Q1 plus a P2 into Q2 whole divided by Q1 plus Q2. In this particular case, this is 105 plus a 60 divided by 10. So one get a 165 divided by 10, giving you a 16.5. So the weighted average price happens to be 16.5 per kg, and this happens to be nothing but a true statement. So number 1 is true, and if number 1 is true, which means option number 2 is going to be out and option number 4 is also going to be out. So one will choose between 1 and 3 at this particular problem. Now what about the second one? The second one talks about a merchant has 1000 kg of rice, a part of which he sells at 8% profit and the remaining at 16% profit. He gains 14% on the whole. The quantity of rice sold at 16% is 750 kg. I want to check if this statement is true or false. This again one can say is a simple application of allegation. Understand if the entire 1000 kg was sold at 8%, my whole return must be nothing but one can say 8%. And what about if I say if the entire rice was sold at 16% profit, my overall gain should also be only 16%. But we neither have 8% nor 16%, something in the middle. So understand we have 8% return, we have a 16% return, but overall you have a 14% return. 14 minus 8 is 6, 16 minus 14 is 2. So this required ratio, one can say, happens to be equals to 1:3. Now what does this 1:3 basically means? If I suppose have 4 kg, then out of this 4 kg, one can say 1 kg was sold at 8% and 3 parts one can say was sold at 16%. Task is to find out at 16%. So understand, one can say if I want this part, it must be 3/4 of total quantity. And how much is one can say 3/4 of the number 1000 kg, and that become equals to a 750 kg. So number 2 also happens to be a true statement. So both statement number 1 and 2 are true. So one can mark option number 1 as the answer for this particular sum. In this sum, it is given that if the digit in the unit place of a 2-digit number is halved and the digit in the tens place is doubled, the number obtained is equal to the number obtained by interchanging the digit. Which of the following is definitely true? Now this word is very crucial. Again, this means something which has to be true in each and every scenario. First of all, let's take a 2-digit number in the form of one can say xy, where one can say x is at tens place, y at the unit place. So now one can say my original number will be equals to x into place value, which is x into 10 plus y into 1, giving you a 10x plus y. And the reverse number one can say will be yx, which I can write as y into 10 plus x into 1. Now what are they saying? Let's look at this particular part. If the digit in the unit place, which is y in our case, is halved, so we now get a new number y by 2 in the unit place, and the digit in the tens place is doubled, which means x now becomes 2x. In that particular case, this particular number which is obtained is equal to the number obtained by interchanging the digit, which simply means that this number now must be equal to nothing but the reverse number. So first of all, if I look at this particular number, 2x in the tens place, so 2x into 10 plus y by 2 in the unit place, and this must be equal to the reverse number, which I can say would be equals to a 10y plus x. Let's simplify this. 20x plus a y by 2 is equals to a 10y plus x. If I bring x on one side, 20x minus x becomes a 19x. 10y minus y by 2 will be equals to 9.5y, or one can say 19y by 2. 19 get cancelled out, and what we get is y is 2x. And let's now try to evaluate each of the statement. The first one says sum of the digit is a 2-digit number. The sum over here must be equals to a x plus y. Now since y is equals to 2x, we get nothing but this particular part to be equals to a 3x. Now understand one thing, we can say the possible value of x can be a 1, 2, 3 or 4 over here. I can't take x to be equals to 5 because in that case this particular part is going to go beyond the number 9 itself. If I told you x is equals to a 1, 2, 3 or a 4, this 3x term can become a 3, 6, 9 or a 12. So sum of the digit is a 2-digit number, may or may not be. Hence number 1 is not the answer. The second one says digit in the unit place is half of the digit in the tens place. So what does number 2 tells you is y is equals to half of x. And this statement one can say is definitely incorrect. Out. The next one talks about the digit in the unit place and tens place are equal. So they are saying y is equals to x. And this also one can say is incorrect. One should mark number 4, but let's see number 4 talks about what? Digit in the unit place y is twice of x, and this is what we already have got, and number 4 is actually the answer for this particular question. In the next sum, the target is to find out, arrange the number in the increasing order, and we can see 4th root of 3, cube root of 2, 6th root of 5, and let's say 6th root of 7. Clearly, when the radical signs are same, it is very simple to compare. Like we can say C is going to be less than D. So if C is less than D, I can say at this particular moment, option number 1 basically would be out at this stage. But the main thing is, if I look at number A, it is nothing but saying 3 raised to 1 by 4. Second one is 2 raised to a 1 by 3, 5 raised to a 1 by 6, 7 raised to a 1 by 6 over here. Now, if I look at these numbers 3, 4 and 6, and if I think about the LCM of 3, 4 and 6, which happens to be a 12, so what I will do now is I can, let's say, take a power 12 everywhere to compare. This raised to 12, this raised to 12, this number raised to 12, this number also raised to 12. And then we can use the principle of indices a power m whole raised to n, a power m times of n. So this result, if you look at, will become 3 power. How much is 1/4 of 12? 3. And the number 3 cubed is a simple number 27. In the next case, how much is 1/3 of the number 12? Giving you a 4. So 2 raised to 4 will become a 16. Then if you look at 1/6 of 12 happens to be a 2. This will become 5 square, 25. And this term, 1/6 of 12 is 2. 7 power 2 is equals to a 49. So one can see over here among this, the smallest is going to be B, followed by C, then a and then a D. So B, C, A, D, and if I look at the options, I should mark option number 2 as the answer for this particular problem. In the next sum again, they've given us two statements, 1 and 2, and we are supposed to check both of them are true, one of them is true, both of them are false, and so on like this. So here they are saying statement number 1, Ram and Shyam can finish a task by working together in 6 days. If Shyam can finish the task by working alone in 8 days, then Ram will take 24 days to complete this. Let's verify this particular fact. We can take the help of LCM method. So Ram plus Shyam will take 6 days. Shyam alone will take 8 days. In this particular case, what we can do is we can take the total work as the LCM of the numbers 6 and 8, giving you a 24. Total work as 24. So what do you think is the rate of work of Ram and Shyam together per day work? So one can say 4 per day. What about Shyam? It's 3 per day. And understand now, if together they do 4 per day, out of that Shyam contributes 3 per day. So one can say Ram must be contributing 1 per day. And at this particular rate, if Ram has to do a 24, the time taken by Ram must be 24. and this number basically matches. And it simply means statement number 1 is going to be true if this happens to be true, which means again option number 2 and option number 4 are basically going to be out at this particular moment. Now what you can also do is you can do in a multiple manners. Understand if you want to do it orally with the help of fractions. So Sham in 8 days can complete the entire work. With the help of Ram, they are able to complete the task in 6 days. So understand if I ask you what fraction of the work was done by Sham in those 6 days, and the answer would be 6 by 8, or one can say 3/4. So 3/4 of the entire work was done by Sham in 6 days, which means the person Ram must have done the remaining 1/4 of the work in 6 days. So Ram, if takes 6 days for 1/4 of the work, for the entire work, Ram will take 4 times of the number 6, giving you nothing but 24, which is same as what they have given to you in statement number 1. So a very, very simple statement over here. Let's try to also look at the next one. If 6 person working 8 hours a day earn 8400 per week, then 9 person working 6 hours a day will earn 9450 per week. The main thing is the per week part is very, very important. So understand what we can do is we can take the help of man days concept or the man hour concept. So over here, 6 person, 8 hour, and that basically means a 48 man hours. In that particular case, your weekly earn amount is 8400. And now we have, let's say, 9 person, 6 hours, that simply means 54 man hours. So for 54 man hours, how much is going to be the amount? We can find it out. And if this part comes out to be 9450, I can say statement number 2 is true. Otherwise, statement number 2 is false. So we can simply use cross multiplication. So 54 into a 8400 divide by a 48. Then I can say 12 fours are, this is 700. Then this is going to be 2 times 350, 2 times 2, this is 27. 0 in the end, 27, 5s are, one can say happens to be nothing but a 135. So 5 with a carry of 13. 27, 3s is 81. 81 plus 13 becomes a 94. So 9450. So which is true, which means statement number 1 and 2, both of them are true. So option number 1 is the required answer for this particular question.